So we have a session titled Unlocking the Potential of Women Entrepreneurs. It's a subject matter that is super important to IFC. It's one of the most important areas that we deal with across the venture capital practice at IFC. There's research that shows the huge inadequacy of support across the venture capital ecosystem for female-owned businesses. Harvard research shows that women have the highest rates, African women have the highest rates of entrepreneurial activity globally. And so 26% of African women are involved in some kind of entrepreneurial activity, whether that's starting a business, doing a side hustle, trading. There's a huge amount of entrepreneurial activity on the continent. But we all know the data points and the statistics in terms of inadequacy of support. The Partech report shows that only 17% of VC funding in Africa goes to female-led businesses, especially poor in fintech. Only 6% of VC funding goes to female-led businesses. So there's a lot more the ecosystem should be doing to support women-led businesses. As part of this session, we'll talk about two areas. First of all, we'll talk about IFC's She Wins program, which is a program that IFC has put in place, but specifically to intervene in the area of supporting female-led businesses. And so this is both from the perspective of supporting women entrepreneurs and supporting capacity building amongst women entrepreneurs, and also supporting capacity building, training, and enablement amongst fund managers. And so if you are a fund manager, if you are a female entrepreneur, please do access the IFC site, ifc.org/She Wins Africa, with more information on the She Wins program. The program was started in the Middle East. It's an accelerator program. We supported 80 female-owned businesses in the first cohort out of the Middle East. We brought it to Africa. We had 3,000 applicants for the first cohort in Africa. The selection process is ongoing. The first 100 companies will shortly be selected for that accelerator program. We have the team from She Wins Africa who will give some context on that program as part of the keynote speech today. We also have experts in terms of women-owned businesses. We have a thought leader, we have an entrepreneur, we have two investors who will give perspectives, their experience in terms of the challenges that female entrepreneurs, that women-owned businesses face, and what we as an ecosystem can do to better support and to better help. And so looking to those, there'll be a series of 4 TED Talks from each of our experts sharing their perspectives. In terms of, before we start that, I'd like to plug my business, which is the Africa VC business at IFC. We have a $400 million portfolio invested in 30 different companies and funds across the continent. We have a keynote speech where we'll give a lot more context on that. Globally, it's a $2.5 billion portfolio. In terms of this discussion, I think I'd just like to highlight the types of businesses, entrepreneurs, funds we'd like to hear from most at this moment in time. At this moment in time, we just approved a $225 million program for our direct investments and fund investments across Africa. The focus right now is on direct investments. We target $5 to $20 million equity tickets. Main focus is Series B and beyond. We have some programs, we have some ability on an exceptional basis to support Series A type businesses. We'd love to hear from companies coming up to Series B if you've not spoken to IFC before. If you had a strong Series A and you've got a strong growth trajectory, you've not spoken to IFC before. If you have funds with those types of companies in your portfolio, we'd love to hear from you going forward. Target primarily businesses greater than 2-3 million ARR, but please do reach out to the team and we'd love to discuss. Back to the She Wins program. We have our experts to speak to the group. We'll start with Katie Hill, who is our thought leader. She's an expert in climate and sustainable finance at BCG Nairobi. She co-leads BCG Green Ventures team, accelerating climate smart companies across Africa. She's got a huge amount of experience in terms of working with female entrepreneurs, female-owned businesses in the continent. I'll invite you to the stage, please, Katie. Thank you.
everyone. Thanks for coming. Okay, I'm not going to lie. The number of people who left the room when the female entrepreneurship in climate panel started might be a slight hint at part of the problem. But thank you all for sticking through one of the more important topics in the world, I think. So, it is a tough topic. We know a bunch of the stats are not super encouraging, but I'll start with just some facts to ground us, and then I think it's important to look for the clear sparks of inspiration and what's working. So, first let me talk about female entrepreneurship in Africa before we move into climate sectors and solutions. So, first off, remarkably, what Elom pointed to is that African women are notably entrepreneurial. A quarter of all businesses on the continent are started or run by women compared to 6% in Europe. So, I think that is an incredible base to be working from. Now, obviously, that is entrepreneurship in its broadest sense, and many Africans are entrepreneurs by necessity. And if we think about the topic of the broader conference today around tech and VC, the numbers are quite different. So, companies that are, founded by female entrepreneurs receive 7% of the VC funding, despite being, 20% of the founder base. And part of that comes from the makeup of the investor base, right? Only 12% of senior GPs in Africa are women, which is going to some degree, influence where capital flows. And this is despite considerable evidence that continues to show that companies with female founders and co-founders outperform. So BCG did a study a few years ago with a major global network of accelerators and found that companies with female founders were converting funding into revenue at 2.5x what companies with only male founders were achieving. So somehow we don't always fully absorb what the data tells us about company performance. Okay, so let's turn to climate, and why does it matter to be having this conversation specifically about climate sectors, energy, agriculture, water, waste, transport. So women are disproportionately impacted by climate change, and a recent UN report looked at, in some of the more extreme climate scenarios, 160 million women and girls will move into poverty by the mid-century. That's 16 million more than men and boys. Or I think around 236 million women will be at great risk of food insecurity compared to 130 million men and boys. So when we talk about climate, there is disproportionate gender impacts all along the way, and therefore we need more women involved in the solutions that we're bringing to bear. But gender also plays into the upside opportunities, right? Climate is going to, the new reality that we're in brings a lot of new business opportunities in green industries. And there's projected to be 67 million new jobs by 2030 in new green sectors, but only 25% are expected to be held by women, just by virtue of them being underrepresented in the sectors that are expected to benefit from new green industry. So, it's helpful in the face of those statistics to talk about the female entrepreneurs who are leading change today, sort of despite the odds. And I just wanted to share a few who inspire me as an example. So Ntabiseng Mosia, who's the CEO, co-founder of Easy Solar, one of the leading paygo solar companies in West Africa operating in Sierra Leone. You have Ada Osakwe, who's a Nigerian agri-food entrepreneur who started up a special fund, venture fund, focused on agri-food businesses and looking at businesses that significantly contribute to climate resilience and food security. Another entrepreneur, Linda Davis, of Giraffe Bioenergy, which is doing local manufacturing of ethanol cooking fuel from cassava in order to kind of grow the Kenyan clean cooking market. They're a Delta 40 company, and Delta 40 is going to speak shortly. So, I can go on. There are many examples of really impressive female entrepreneurs in this space. We just know that there aren't enough of them. So what's needed? As a start, the gender lens has to be brought in across the board on all things climate, right? On policy, on funding strategies, development strategies. So that needs to trickle down into entrepreneurship and venture funding. We need more skills and opportunities to younger women so that they can move into many of these sectors that have been historically dominated by their male peers. We need additional support to female founders because we know they're swimming upstream when it comes to cultural norms, business biases, and that's why programs like She Wins are awesome to see. We need more female GPs, but we also need more GPs overall recognizing that their investments will perform better with female leadership in some way, shape, or form. And I think we're going to hear from a few investors and entrepreneurs that can bring all of this to light even more than I can. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katie. Next, we have Lorna Rutto coming to the stage. Lorna is founder of Ecopost, Ecopost Sustainable Living, a social enterprise stopping plastic leakage into the environment. Ecopost drives the circular economy via integrating marginal waste picking community and recycling plastic waste. Lorna's company has created 300 jobs and recycled 13 million kilograms of plastic waste. Look forward to hearing from you, Lorna.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Come on, you've not eaten breakfast. Hey, that's the spirit. Go, girls. Go, guys, also. Thank you. I am so excited to get this chance to speak to such beautiful, pretty, and handsome people. And my name is Lorna Rutto again. I'm a multi-passionate social entrepreneur with a vision to have a green Africa free from poverty. And I'm also the founder and CEO of Ecopost Sustainable Living, which is a social enterprise that recycles plastic, agricultural waste also. And we recycle very useful, environmentally friendly plastic poles for various applications such as signage, fencing, building and construction. We also recycle them to manufacture pellets that has a lot of post-consumer uses that they can be used to make all these things. We see plastic items, chairs, containers, among other things. And I am very excited also to advise that I am one of the applicants of She Wins Africa. Can you say yay? She Wins Africa. I'm telling you, She Wins Africa is a platform that I am so excited to get a chance to interact with because they take entrepreneurs like us who are hardly visible in this continent, and we are given a lot of business visibility. We are given a lot of capital advisory. We are matchmaked with investors. Like I think a lot of you here, yay, I'm waiting to meet a few of you after this. We also get a chance to get a lot of training. It's such a beautiful thing for entrepreneurs who go through a lot of pain points. In my business model, I work with a lot of youth and especially women from the very poor and marginalized communities. And one of the major pain points, I'm telling you, and which is something that I really went through, is we're not perceived as the conventional businesses. We in the past, I used to really have difficulty getting credit facilities as compared to the conventional businesses around. We have been perceived as more risky, and this is something that is really a big challenge to most of the youth and women groups that I work with from the marginalized communities. When you go to look for credit, which is what we really need, the credit for assets, credit for tools, for even technical knowledge, skills, you are hardly considered. And this is because of probably they would require all these collaterals or a big profit history showing that you're making so much money already. But how do you expect startups or even poor marginalized women to have all such kinds of facilities? It is very difficult, and it's been such a challenge. And I'm very excited because for example, from 10 years ago, I was assisted by just a single asset. It was a locally fabricated machine from a business plan competition that I applied. That was in 2009. And that machine enabled me to create thousands of income opportunities over time. And as we are speaking, as I'm speaking right now, in the last 10 years, we've been able to recycle over 13 million kilograms of plastic waste. This would have been waste that would have otherwise been thrown outside there, littering the streets, clogging the sewers, and even encroaching into people's homes. When you look at our situation in Kenya today, over 2,400 metric tons of waste is normally generated every day, and only 10% of this is recycled. All the other waste is the one that ends up littering the streets, clogging the sewers, and even encroaching into our homes. The situation is so bad that even UNEP has classified it as one of the worst humanitarian crises in the country. And I am so excited that whatever we are manufacturing right now, it's actually a suitable alternative to timber. So we take this waste from the streets, from the dump site, and from wherever, and we manufacture these products that are alternative to timber. And this has enabled us to save over 4,300 acres of forest as we are speaking today. And I am very excited to know that with collaborations with She Wins Africa, and even being given these networking platforms and assistance, we are going to impact the country even more. Right now, I have only 100 direct employees, and over 12,000 people are getting income opportunities from this opportunity. But now with this kind of partnership, we're going to make a difference in this country. And I am talking about over 200 million people will be impacted in the next 5 years, hopefully, after we partner and we work together. So I'm calling on to you to join hands with us as we work together in this journey to make a difference. Think impact, think Ecopost, and thank you very much for this grand opportunity. I am very excited. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Lorna. Next, we'd like to invite Lewam to the stage. Lewam is an investor. She's a principal at Partech Africa, one of IFC's favorite funds, one of the funds that we've invested in. Lewam invests in seed plus to Series C startups across Africa. She began her career working in a fintech, subsequently joined Carlyle Group, and now is a principal with Partech. Lewam.
Hi, everyone. As Elom mentioned, I'm Lewam Kefela. I am a principal at Partech Africa. Partech Africa, maybe just to brief the rest of you in the room that might not know us, is one of the largest Africa-focused venture capital funds with over 450 million right now in assets under management across 2 funds. We've invested in about 20 companies across 9 countries in Africa. We typically invest from seed plus to Series C, as Elom mentioned, with ticket sizes between $1 million and $15 million. So super pleased to be here with you today to talk about a topic that's very personally and professionally, I'm very personally and professionally invested in, which is advancing women in technology, and I guess specifically in this instance, climate. I'm going to preface it by saying I don't know enough about climate. There's definitely experts in the room that know more than I do. But I do know a fair amount about the venture ecosystem landscape and have spent my career investing both in venture capital and private equity asset classes across more frontier and more developed emerging markets. So glad to set the context and glad to be here with all of you today. So as it has been discussed and maybe rediscussed, African women have the highest rate of entrepreneurial activity across the world, which is no surprise to many of us. Studies have shown that African women are more likely to start businesses than men and are more likely to build more resilient businesses, which is not a surprise to me, and I'm sure not a surprise to a lot of the women in the room. However, as we've sort of seen, and in research we do at Partech, only about 17% of equity went to female-founded companies last year, and that represented about 25% of the deal count that was done in investments last year. That's actually a modest increase over year of 3 to 4 percentage points. So we're starting to see maybe a little bit more emphasis on investing in female-led businesses, which is really exciting. But obviously, it's not moving as fast as it should, especially with the context of where female entrepreneurship outside of technology actually is. And the statistics actually become more dire when you think about things like clean tech, because clean tech has become quite a sector in our ecosystem. We got to 13% of equity funding went to clean tech deals last year. Unfortunately, only 1% of that went to female-led businesses, which is like a very, very stark contrast. So how do we change this and how do we move it forward? Again, I'm not going to pretend to know all of the answers. I'm just going to hypothesize and talk about what I'm excited about, what we're excited about, and what we're sort of pushing. I think the first and foremost thing that I've sort of seen really make a tangible difference is documenting a lot of the success stories that we have with female entrepreneurs across the continent. There is an old adage that you can't beat what you cannot see, and I firmly believe that to be true. So if I were to think about maybe a few of the success stories that I've seen that really inspire me, there's Odun Ewani from PiggyVest in Nigeria, which is a wealth tech startup that makes it super easy to save and invest. It's actually become one of the largest wealth techs in Nigeria at the moment. It's very, very exciting. From our portfolio, Ida from Iliad, helping small merchants be able to run their storefronts more efficiently. So that's been pretty exciting to see that business grow under her leadership. And then to kind of throw a different example from a more frontier market, Chilufya from Premier Credit in Zambia, building quite a rapidly growing challenger bank for Central and Southern Africa, which has been quite inspiring for me to see. And then I'm sure there's so many of you in the room and also a part of the She Wins program that are doing spectacular work and would love to meet, hopefully after this or later in the week. I think the second thing is increasing representation on the investor side of the table. I think this is a point that's made, and we're starting to see improvements there with more senior investment professionals being women and more fund managers being women on the African continent, myself included, but also people like Maya from Aggressive, Lalemba from Enigma, Hema from 535. So we're starting to see that improvement happen. I would argue that this is actually more critical now on the early growth stages, because if you look at the statistics for female founders, about 81% of the deals that were done in female founders last year was actually concentrated on the seed side. So as we think about the graduation of representation and representation helping eliminate some of this bias, I think it's super critical to start to see that also move to the early growth side, which is why I feel very privileged to hold the position that I hold and hope that this continues to sort of increase the representation across later stage funds where we get growth equity funding. And then I think the last thing, maybe if I were to emphasize, I think there's specific initiatives that are focused on accelerating and supporting female entrepreneurship, because when you think about really what it takes to remedy inequality, I think there needs to be some level of like super equity to level the playing field. And so having and supporting female-focused initiatives is quite critical. Obviously, the She Wins program and the work IFC is doing is super critical here to provide the capacity, support, network, and mentorship for female founders to start and grow their businesses. But also, we're starting to see a rise of female-focused funds across the continent on the earlier stages to sort of help the companies grow. So I think all of those kind of measures are very inspiring to me personally. There's obviously a really, really long way to go, but at least I think we're sort of making a good start, and I'm at least inspired by the female founders in the room, and then by all the policy initiatives that are happening to push more and more investment capital into female entrepreneurs. And we know female entrepreneurs to be resilient entrepreneurs. So I'm hoping that in the future, we start to see a world where the actual rate of entrepreneurship mirrors the amount of funding that's going to female entrepreneurs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lewam. Very, very powerful messages, very powerful data points there. and especially enjoyed hearing about how you at Partech are thinking about addressing this issue head on. Next on the stage, we have Micheline Ntiru. She's Director of Post-Investment Support at Delta 40, investing in climate businesses across Africa. She's been in the industry for over 20 years. She was previously business advisor to Stanford Seed, guiding over 50 different CEOs and growth stage businesses in Africa. She was also at one point part of the IFC team. She's on several investment committees and boards of various funds and companies. Very distinguished. Micheline, please come to the stage. Thank you.
Me? Yes, I think you can hear me. It's so great to be here. This is one of my all-time favorite conferences, and so when I was asked to join IFC and our other thought leaders, investors, I really jumped at this opportunity. I have to say that I didn't read the small print that was saying that it had to be TED Talk style, and so panicked last night when I thought, oh my goodness, you know, this is bigger and harder than I thought. But I woke up this morning and realized that this topic, really thinking about the nexus between gender and climate and what we do as entrepreneurs, as investors, as thought leaders, as business supporters, is something that I've been, you know, sort of thinking about for years, right? In the noughties. A typical day in a month of work for me was either in, I don't know, the highlands of Madagascar, the Copperbelt province of Zambia, Zambezi province of Mozambique, really working to provide capacity building to food security and agribusiness. So I reckon I've spoken to, what, scores, at least say 60 farmers who comprise 70%, right, of 60, call it 60, 70% of our economies in Africa, farmers, most of whom are women. And so I started to think about agribusiness a long time ago as an engine to economic development and women as central to agribusiness. We have lots of statistics now. When it comes to, say, reduction in GHG emissions, when we think about mitigation, we know that agribusiness has at least a 12% reduction in these when done properly, when done sustainably. We also know, and this I can attest from hanging out with farmers, with women in at least 30 countries on the continent. Women are absolutely brilliant at doing these things that have big fancy words, like resilience. Women will leave no stone unturned to find the right water source. African women, my goodness, we will look for the most resistant seeds as we are clearing land, planting maize meal, planting cassava, thinking about fruits and vegetables. And this is what 70% of us spend our time doing. So I'm going to start with agriculture as the lowest hanging fruit when we think about the opportunity for gender and climate in terms of economic development on the continent. These are the reasons why. We're doing it, we do it well, we're contributing to mitigation as well as resilience. The only problem is, though, you're not seeing women with titles of land. You're not seeing scores of African women managing tractors, right? Managing Uber technology that will enhance yields or provide access to millions. Again, we are at the lower end of that value chain. And so that's where the opportunity lies. In addition to agribusiness, let's say that I spent less time in rural communities and started to work around supporting SMEs. Small and medium enterprises, again, the backbone of our economies on the continent. And in my work supporting, I can say, 100 or so businesses across the continent, I realized that whether we like to admit it or not, women lack certain skills, and there are reasons why. I'll come back to it. Some of them are soft skills like confidence and how we present ourselves and the amazing businesses we've started. And some of them are so-called harder skills like finance and engineering. And so with the amazing incubators and accelerators I have worked with and continue to work with, we're falling behind. There is that gap. So we need more women founders for sure, but we also need more confident funders. So we don't say what I hear at least once a week from at least a dozen of you investors in the room, oh, there's no investable, businesses. So in addition to needing more founders, we obviously need more funders, right? And in the past couple of years, since I've been back on the continent, I've been amazed at the Alithias and Aruas and ATG Samata and even others that aren't only investing with a gender lens, so other VC and PE investors, Delta 40 is one of them. So there's been, an increase of these types of investors, right? And why do we need more of them? It's obvious. It may not be so obvious to all of you. There's a bias. As an investor, I know this for sure. We invest in people that seem or look like us, and this is unconscious. The good news is that for all men investment teams, or for investment teams where women have no or little power, there are some guidelines that have been that have come up in the last few years, such as the 2X gender lens, that just provides specifics as to what does it mean to invest in women, so that there are no excuses anymore. Actually, I heard 7% earlier. I'm stuck on a number which is 2%. So last year, of all the funding that went to Africa, only 2% went to African businesses. And so I posit that with more African female funders, we will get to see a lot more female-owned businesses receiving this funding. So far I've spoken about agribusiness, where my career began, investments, funds, and the need to increase funding, as well as to actually increase the numbers of small and medium enterprises that are founded by women. And to that latter point, we will not get there if we do not address the specific skills gap that we have that really hinder the ability of women to position themselves successfully as founders. Two things about that before I close. STEM. We hear a lot about STEM and the need to really equip young girls with some of these skills. And the good news is we're seeing these efforts pop up in the market. This is really important because later on, when you're trying to understand engineering, when you're trying to understand, a biomass plant, when you're trying to talk about the technology in your business, my personal experience is that we just see a lot more, say, African men than women able to do that. Because 20 years ago or 30 years ago, science and technology was not promoted for young girls. So this is an incredible opportunity. In addition, there's been a lot of talk about upskilling women and men who are already in jobs. BCG is telling us that, 67 billion jobs or something will be availed through this green economy umbrella by 2030. So upskilling is extremely important. Kawasifi Ventures is doing it. Shortlist is putting 750 women and training them on solar technology and the like. But I do want to say that given that we're only 20 to 30% of women currently in those jobs, in those green jobs, you're going to upskill mostly men. So we have to go way back and think about when somebody is 13, when somebody is 16, hence my emphasis on STEM. And so I'm really excited to be having this conversation, to be thinking about who are the brilliant funders, who are the most avant-garde investors. And please, let's think about the lowest hanging fruit, in my opinion, which is agribusiness, which, by the way, is only getting 2% of climate funding right now. So let's think about agribusiness. Let's think about the need to have more female founders. Think about the investors, us, and what we can do in terms of gender lens investing. And let's reach way back and look at a 12, 13, and 16-year-old and think about the right STEM skills as we also look at upskilling in these jobs created by the green economy. So I'll close now. And I started by saying that I spent lots of time in villages and rural areas working to really promote agribusiness. And today I'm so excited to continue to do that with some really forward-thinking female farmers, female agri-technologists, and others who are really, really central to essentially 70% of our continent's economy. So thank you so much.
No, thank you, Micheline. I'd like to take the opportunity to give a big thank you to all of our speakers who have shared very great insights and personal stories about this issue, about supporting women-owned businesses, something very dear to our hearts. We have a keynotes on the Money Point stage shortly, where Anne will give a lot more detail in terms of what we're doing in She Wins Africa, the type of support that we're providing to entrepreneurs, future programs that we're doing from a climate perspective. And I'll give a lot more context on programs that IFC overall is implementing to support the tech and the VC ecosystem in Africa. So look forward to see everybody on that side. And thank you once again for taking the time to be with us and to engage in this important topic.